You're looking at the vehicle that's 122 feet long, has about an 80-foot wingspan, about a 56-foot tail. You're basically looking at an airplane, a very fragile airplane. That is not unlike any airplane that you and I would fly in, with the exception of two sorts of things. First of all, it has a delta wing configuration, which means it's really good when it's going fast and super bad when it's going slow. And secondly, the entire thing is wrapped in a thin tile layer. Actually, the tiles are not thin in the sense that they're each about maybe a couple of inches thick, roughly 4 inches by 4 inches, but there's only a 1/1000th of an inch glaze on the outer surface of the tile, and that's pretty much what's protecting you from the searing heat of the atmosphere when you re-enter. And so this spacecraft has to decide when it's a spaceship and when it's an airplane. And so there's a trade-off that's going on all the time based upon the sensing that it feels about the atmosphere. All right? So as it ascends to orbit, remember that's turning chemistry into speed. It basically is lying pretty much dormant in the shadow of the external tank that's helping to propel it. The tank is above, the shuttle is below, and the shuttle is protected from that shock wave as it leaves the Earth's atmosphere. Now, going out of the atmosphere is cooperating with you because it's getting thinner and thinner and thinner all the time, and that's great because as you build speed, you want less resistance on the vehicle. At the end of the ascent to orbit, the whole vehicle flips around, the tank is dropped off, comes back into the atmosphere, and burns up. It's the only part of the shuttle system that's not reusable. Solid rocket boosters would have jettisoned about 2 minutes into the flight. They never go outside the atmosphere, so they don't have a re-entry problem. They're not going that fast. They just come down on parachutes. It's the orbiter that has the re-entry problem because it's built this speed and has to find its way back into the atmosphere. And so what it does, when it's in orbit, the first thing they do is open the payload bay doors and release all the heat that builds up from the electronics, the astronauts' bodies, and everything like that. So they vent that into space. Payload bay doors stay open for the entire mission. The space habitat that you see there, Space Hab, was donated to us by a company called Mastertest. Basically flew on 18 missions. There are 2 of them. They can fly back-to-back as a tandem, or they can fly singular. We have configured Endeavour to replicate the flight that teacher astronaut Barbara Morgan took when she flew an STS-118, just to honor teachers and the work that she does. That means that there's a single space habitat in about bay 6. There are 13 bays inside the payload bay, which goes back 60 feet. So it's 60 feet by 15 by 15, so it's like the size of a school bus with 10 kids. And we've reconfigured the interior of Endeavour to mimic that flight. And Barbara, by the way, is very pleased about that. So what you're looking at is a vehicle that's completely covered with tiles. The tiles on the bottom are hard-fired ceramic tiles. They're made of sand, silica, and each is individually numbered. There are 24,000 of them that are individually applied. And across the life of the vehicle, and this applies for the fleet as well, there were 5 space-worthy orbiters, about 10% of the tiles were replaced. And the replacement is if there's any damage noted on the tile or if there's any disposition of the tile. For example, there's a requirement that a tile cannot be more than 1/1000th of an inch off in terms of the gap, or 1/1000th of an inch offset in terms of the step. So there's step and gap. Okay.
The glaze thickness, why didn't they do a thicker glaze? That seems like it's not very much.
It's not very much. It doesn't need to be.
Oh, it doesn't need to be?
Well, yeah, that's right. You don't want anything that, okay, weight is the penalty factor on the shuttle. You see these things up here in those black, they call them eyeballs. There's a pod there that extends from beyond. Okay, inside that pod, there's some very nasty propellants that actually operate 2 engines called the orbital maneuvering engines. So once the main engines are dead and that external tank has gone away, you have to circularize your orbit. In other words, so you don't follow the tank back into the atmosphere and burn up.
Okay.
You also have to use those engines to slow you down so you can break orbit speed and come back. Okay. The reason that you see those black tiles there, and they are heavier than the white tiles, is because there was an analysis done, and where this double delta breaks, one narrow angle delta and obtuse angle right there, there was a jet of hot gas that hit that point. And the analysis showed that it could have been problematic. It wasn't, but it could have been. So I would have covered the whole darn thing in black tiles.
Yeah.
But that's weight. So they analyzed where they needed to address this issue, and they did it, and it's symmetrical. It's on both sides of the vehicle.
So what are the white ones?
The white was the same thing. It's just that they are a different kind of, they're different thickness. They're not as heavy, and they're also designed not to, okay, and it's interesting the question that you asked, because it's all the same material. And so why would some of it have a greater thermal capacity than others? It has to do with the thickness of the material. So it's always transferring heat. The question is, how fast does it transfer the heat and how far does it go before the thermal direction changes? Because once you're no longer burning coming back into the atmosphere, you're in a cooler environment, the temperature gradient switches, and it begins to cool down from the outside. So it's not that it stops the heat flow, it just retards it. Because if I had a tile, I wish I could show it's mostly air. It's mostly not air. Because air is a great conductor, a great constituent. Okay, so let's go to the back of the vehicle.